Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about sound effects. I have talked on this channel several times about music in games. I've talked about ambient music in general because I really love ambient music. I own a huge ambient music collection. I have a whole video about that. I also have talked specifically about Fallout's music and the influences on it and how I specifically gave ambient music to our audio director who passed it on to Mark Morgan, who made the most beautiful Fallout music. Definitely should watch that video. And the reason for all this is I feel like music is so important in establishing the tone of your game because it's something that's just there and it enters a whole different way than most of the stuff in your game. It's enough said about that. But I wanted to talk about sound effects today because I realized I've never talked about it before. I don't have a whole lot to say about audio because, as if I have to remind you all, I'm not a musician. Can we roll that clip? $9.99, all you can eat lobster. Okay, I think that proved I'm not a musician, but I want to talk about sound effects and why they're so important to your game. And I'll try to give you some constructive feedback on sound effects. But first of all, the reason I think sound effects are so important is they are incredibly attention grabbing. Sound effects can basically draw the player's attention to something, even if they're busy doing something else. Basically, you can draw their attention if they don't want it drawn. And this is because sounds go directly into the brain's limbic system. Smells are the same way, but I firmly believe that we should not put smells in video games. There have been multiple attempts to do that. I don't want to smell any of my games. I don't want to smell the apocalypse. I don't want to smell sewers and dungeons. I certainly don't want to smell dead things. So let's just not put smells in games. But we can put sounds. And because they bypass your high-level thinking, sounds are great because they make the player feel. You can really make a statement, an emotional statement, with sound effects, the same way you can with music. I know I've mentioned this before, but the level up sound from EverQuest, I still remember that clearly. It would happen and go dong. It was a really loud sound effect. And the reason I remember it is a side effect of leveling up in EverQuest was you got all your health back, which was great because usually you got XP from killing things. And so you frequently, at least for me, I found myself leveling up in combat. On more than one occasion, I was about to die. My health was really low. I killed something, leveled up, dong, and my health bar refilled. On more than one occasion, that saved my character from certain death. And on at least one occasion, it didn't matter. I died anyway. It filled it back up. My health bar filled up, and it got taken away again, meaning I basically took 2 health bars worth of damage and still couldn't defeat that creature. I should have considered it. I should have done /con before I attacked it. But that's me. That's EverQuest. That was many years ago. I'll get over it. Just not today. What I would recommend is if you're making a game and you're thinking about sound effects, pick a few moments in your game that you really want the player to notice. And you want it to have a punch to it and make a special sound effect for it. It could be leveling up. It could be a certain skill going off. In fact, let's talk about when to use sound effects in a game. And I have to be general here because, let's face it, there's a million different kinds of games. And even if I restrict it to RPGs, there's a million different kinds of RPGs. So let me talk about, in general, where I think you can get the most impact from a good sound effect. First of all, and the most frequent one, is when the player is interacting with the user interface. This is the time to have really good feedback. When the player presses a button or brings down a menu or something or brings up a new interface. If you've ever played games that don't have sounds for those versus ones that do, there's a huge difference. And I can tell you when I'm making a game, once the sounds go in, especially for clicking buttons, it's just, there's something visceral about, I see the button go down, but it's completely silent. And then once someone in audio has added that really perfect sound effect for click, click, or bung, or psh, or whatever it's supposed to be, suddenly the UI just feels better, and nothing changed other than that sound. Another great use for sound effects is when skills are actually used. For active skills, this is like a no-brainer. You know, if I shoot a gun, of course I want a sound for that. If I stab someone, I want a sound for that. But I think where it really pays off is when you put passive skills in the game, and those are skills that the player doesn't decide when to use them, the game does. Good example of that would be spotting a trap. You know, players walking along and all of a sudden, boom, like a little, maybe a pit outlines, or a wire across the floor outlines, and it may have something that floats and goes, you know, trap spotted. You really, 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 really should consider adding a good sound effect for that, because you want to get the player's attention, make them stop what they're doing, especially if they're moving, and you also want that to have a vibe for it, because their skill is passive. They don't decide when to use it. This is their reward. A trap was spotted. Reward them. Give them a really cool sound effect. Kind of mentioned already with combat, but item use should have a cool sound effect with it. But especially you want to drill down on unique items, really cool items, really powerful items, even rare if it's not unique, if it's rare. You want to make those items especially stand out. Good animations are great. A good model and a good animation is great, but adding a good sound effect will take that to the next level. And weapons need so many sound effects. Do not underestimate how much work you need from audio to get a weapon sounding good. I wrote down just some off the top of my head, and I'm sure I missed some. There's when you wield the weapon and when you unwield it. There's using it, whether it's swinging it or firing it. There's hitting with it. There's critically hitting with it. There's missing with it. There's the weapon running out of ammo or charges, and you go to use it, and there should be some sound effect that this isn't, you can't use this because it's out of ammo or out of charges, whatever. There should be a reload sound, which they'll probably be doing soon after hearing that out of ammo or out of charge sound. You may even want to add a sound when, if you have damage to weapons and armor, when they drop below a certain threshold and now need repair, especially if an icon pops up somewhere or a message comes out, you probably want to put a sound effect in there, because there's nothing worse than going into combat and realizing you missed the icon pop up at the end of the last combat, that your weapon is really damaged and isn't doing a lot of damage, or your armor is really damaged and doesn't have a really good damage reduction anymore. And then you die in the next combat because you never noticed that little teeny icon just turn on in the bottom corner. If it has a sound effect, that's great. And by the way, all of these things can be done with event systems. These are, if you make an event for when a weapon runs out of ammo, when a weapon fires, when a weapon hits, these can all be events that just get called out into the world. Usually they're there for the combat systems to listen to. Oh, that guy was hit. I need to play a reaction on that creature and maybe do a blood splatter and all that stuff. Sound is listening for that too, so it can play sounds for all those things that just happened. I have an entire video on event systems. Most audio happens in response to an event. Those two things go together really well. So programmers, you may want to watch the event systems video and create those things for your audio engineers to use. People often ask, like, well, what style of sound effects should I use? And that's something I really can't talk about because it really depends on your game. This will help you narrow down, based on your art style and just the tone of your game, do you want realistic sounds or not? Do you want, cartoony sounds? Do you want them to be funny or not? Do you want them to be, I don't want to necessarily say quiet, but reserved? Or do you want them to be crazy over the top sounds? Like that EverQuest sound was not in any way quiet or reserved. It was a giant dong, because they really wanted to let you know that you leveled up, because that was a huge event in EverQuest. When you gained a level, new abilities, health bar refreshed. It was a big deal to go up a level. My recommendation, if you're making a game now, my biggest recommendation is do not wait to add sound effects to the last minute. I've done that on a few of my games, and I can tell because it's a game that no one ever says anything about the sound effects because they're there. They're okay. No. What this means, though, is you've got to bring your audio team members into your team as soon as possible, as soon as it makes sense with scheduling, as soon as it makes sense with your budget. But please remember that the earlier you add them, the better this is all going to work out. And not just your audio people. Make sure your programmers are creating events for all the things that audio wants to listen to before you need them. If you don't do that, they're going to get massively overwhelmed when all of a sudden requests are coming in from the audio department for 50, 100, 200 events. And I am not exaggerating. There are going to be a lot of events that audio listens to. Some of them should already exist because they're events that happen for other things, but some of them will be specifically audio only, like footsteps. So don't wait to the last minute to add the audio team members. And even before you add them, don't wait, programmers, to create your event system and then add all of these events, whether they're audio specific or general, that audio will respond to. Anyway, that's me talking about sound effects. Hope you liked it.